That's it.
Okay. Okay. I have the prayer.
Assalamu alaikum. Once again, it's in the name of Almighty God Allah. It appeared in the person of Master Silis Muhammad, long-awaited Messiah of the Muslim world and the Christian world, and the Mahdi of the Muslim world. We thank him for coming out of the east into the west to save us, a people who have been lost. Moreover, we thank him for having raised in our midst a divine leader, teacher, and guide in the person of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our spiritual mother Mary, of both the Bible and Holy Quran. He raised up an $88 million nation, well over 450,000 followers right here in the wilderness hills of North America. We thank him for that, and we say may the peace and blessings of Allah forever and ever be upon him. We also give thanks and honor to the Honorable Silis Muhammad, who is our leader, teacher, and guide in the earth at this hour, the very spirit of truth and the likeness of the two. We know him as the Son of Man, the spiritual Son. So it is in their names, the name of Master Silis Muhammad, Almighty God, and in the name of his beloved, last and greatest messenger of God, the Most High Elijah Muhammad, and in the name of their spiritual son, the Honorable Silis Muhammad, to humbly greet you once again in Arabic. We say, Assalamu alaikum. I definitely would like to also give honor and respect to our monarch, the Queen, Her Majesty Mishaki Muhammad, the beloved wife of the Honorable Silis Muhammad, for her dedication to him and to us, for her service over the last 40 years of aiding him in making our dream, our desire for government a reality. So we thank her for her commitment and her stance. Once again, believers, you could have not have chosen a better place to be other than right here in Muhammad's Mosque of Islam. And this traditionally has been a time of the year. I can remember back in the day when I was a new recruit in the Nation of Islam. And one of our ministers who's passed would fire up the rostrum at this particular time during the months of Thanksgiving and Christmas, or we would look forward to coming to the mosque because we knew that the minister was going to fire it up, especially around this time. We know that we've just, or the devils, and our people included, have just celebrated what they call Thanksgiving, right? And this is the Thanksgiving holiday, right? And they just did the Black Friday, and there's a lot of festivity going on, and a lot of thinking going on. And generally, your families have the meetings, and they have the Thanksgiving turkey and the Thanksgiving ham, and they give thanks to a God for what they are grateful for. But the devil has a way of making evil fair seeming. I mean, we know as Muslims in the second resurrection, even in the first resurrection, that Thanksgiving is not for us. Yeah, we give thanks every day for the blessings of Allah, for all that he has done good for us. But the celebration of a Thanksgiving is exclusive to the white man and his being thankful for his forefathers overcoming the Native Americans and murdering them and overtaking the land in order to give it to their progeny, to their offspring. And today they are thankful for having survived it. For when they first came here, we know the history that the people were brought over here, the red man, some 16,000 years ago, right? The Israelite Muhammad taught us. This was land given to them. And the white man got on ships and began to cross the oceans, as the minister stated earlier, moved westward, trying to find the Middle East, and stumbled across the islands, the Caribbean islands, and ultimately ended up on the mainland of America. And here they found the natives. He came on ships, right? Small numbers of them set sail and landed here and began to try and populate. They were outnumbered by the Native Americans, right? But the Native Americans welcomed them in with open arms. And then the devils, out of the generosity of the Native Americans knowing how to survive over here in this wilderness, began to teach them how to cultivate it, grow corn, and survive. Some of the first ones died out from hunger and starvation. But the Indians welcomed them in, them pilgrims, right? Welcomed them in and began to feed them, teach them how to build shelter and clothe themselves in the wilderness. And what did they get in return? Murder. Their lands absconded, wiped out in mass. And here now today, we see the white man being thankful for having taken their land. We don't want to get caught up in that foolishness and that madness. So we need to teach our children, teach our people that, no, that ain't the day for you to give thanks. And I know you go and you spend time with your family. Just so happened my family really didn't do it this year. But yeah, you go and spend time with your family and they want you to give thanks. And the first word you want to say out of your mouth, well, I'm sorry that the Indians had to pay a price to be wiped out and murdered with smallpox and killed outright, for the white man to be able to come and steal this land for them, and then to go across the Atlantic Ocean and bring us here as slaves. We're sorry that happened. But now we're here today, still subject to the Caucasians' will and whim. Even after he got here and stole the land from the Indians, right, and wiped them out, he went to war with his brother, am I right? Yes, sir. In England, and said, we not only want the territory and the land that we're on, we want to be a sovereign nation, is that right? Yes. We want to be a government independent of the British Empire, right? Yes. And they are thankful for that today. Rightly so, for them to be thankful and to fly their flag and to be proud to be an American, to make America great again. But that ain't got nothing to do with us. We are still underlings and subject to the white man. Just thought I'd mention that since we just got through this Thanksgiving celebration. But our message today, I wanted to piggyback on what I taught last Sunday, the rod of Moses and self-determination. And we started off talking about the Jews and how they have gone before the world and have misrepresented themselves as the chosen people of God. They have told the world ever since, well, the beginning of Zionism in the early 20th century, early 1900s, they began to espouse this concept of Zionism and nationhood for themselves. And they began to project that they were the chosen people of God, and that they should have a land and a government that they can call their own. And they told the lie that they spent 400 years in bondage in Egypt land. And we on last Sunday just began to question that whole story. That why did God want to choose a people to be his nation, to be his representatives on earth? Out of all the other people on the face of the planet Earth, why did God want to choose a people to be his people on the face of the earth?
Good question.
Well, when we check the Bible's prophecy and history, we begin to look at that history of Abraham, right? That there was a long-standing covenant or contract between Abraham and God. That God said to Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and that they shall afflict them, and that they shall serve them. And after that time, I, God, will come and judge that nation that they shall serve. Now the Jews, after being taught by Musa some 4,000 years ago, and having had in their possession what we know today to be the Old Testament of the Bible, they call it Torah, they began to think that they were the people that Musa wrote about in the books. So much so that they began to migrate from Europe 4,000 years ago into the Middle East. And some of them made it as far as Mecca and Medina. And we have that history in the Holy Quran, where Prophet Muhammad, when he left Mecca, he found Jews in Medina and who aided him in the beginnings, early beginnings of Islam. So we know that they did migrate from Europe into the Middle East. In fact, they migrated all over the planet. But it had to have been a small number of them, just counting the number of them today. All right? But they have been claiming this false claim for a long time. And now we have to analyze whether or not that claim is true or false. We say that it is false. And it's this particular time of the year that they propagate that foolishness. We saw it in the movie 10 Commandments, am I right?
That's right.
With Charleston Heston, am I right? Mm-hmm. And this devil spent some $50 million back in the day to produce this movie. It was probably the most highly expensive budgeted film of its time. It is still, I believe, in the top 10 ranking of producing movies in the world. They put some money behind this. Now, they were supporting the Jews in their claim, trying to depict that the Jews are the chosen people of God. That Charleston Heston was Moses and that he was a Jew. You didn't see no black people, for the most part, being represented. Not even as the Pharaoh. You had a white man, okay? Yul Brynner, I believe it was, playing that role. No black people. It was all whitewashed. And we were to buy it, and many of our brothers and sisters, especially the Christian brothers and sisters, and some Muslims, accepted hook, line, and sinker that the Jews are the chosen people of God. But we raise these questions. And our subject is still the rod of Moses. We want to get there. And self-determination. We just laying some preliminary work to get where we want to go. We want to ask some questions. Well, Jew, if you are the chosen of God, and you fulfill that prophecy, Genesis 15:13, where the people were to spend 400 years in bondage, then name the Pharaoh that you came in Egypt under and the one that you left Egypt under, where it equals 400 years.
Yes, sir.
If the script says that you spent 40 years in the wilderness after you left Egypt, and that a whole generation died out in the deserts, then shows us the remains, the bones of that generation that died out. The book says that some 450,000, 600,000 or so left Egypt. So show us in the real book of life, in the history, where those bones are in the deserts in the Middle East, where you went over in with tarrying after you were led out of bondage. Where are the bones? If you are the chosen people of God, and God came and spoke to you and chose you, and that after that 40 years of you spending in the wilderness, and that generation died out, and Joshua was supposed to lead the people into the promised land, where, or your historical records, that you had a government and that you governed in Jerusalem, in the Middle East, in Palestine, some 4,000 years ago. If you check the history, the people in Palestine, before the white people came over there and started to take the land, were all Muslim people.
Yes, sir.
Bethlehem, a Muslim city. All of that was Muslim, not Jewish. There's no historical record to support their claims. Even the World Organization, UNESCO, has stated, I believe this is 1917, or even, I'm sorry, 1917 or 1918, that, 2017 or 2018, UNESCO voted unanimously that the Jews have no rights to Jerusalem, that West Bank, that Gaza Strip, that they have no historical rights to it, no biological claim to that area. And it's still in dispute today. There's a big argument going on for the last 100 years. So we're raising these claims or accusations against the Jews. And we should raise it with a loud voice. And note that the devil veers away from that conversation. He don't want you questioning the Jew. But yet the Jew does not even accept Jesus of 2,000 years ago, or the Jesus in the book, the Bible, the gospel, as being the Son of God or the Messiah. He don't accept Jesus of 2,000 years ago. He don't accept Jesus of the book or the Bible as being the Messiah or the Son of God. So how can the white people who call themselves Christians and representatives of Christ and God be in cahoots with the Jew and accept their fairy tale? What are they trying to hide? What are they trying to cover up? It's the question. Why did God want to choose a nation? What is God's rationale for wanting to choose a nation and to establish a government that he can call his own, and a people that he can call his own, to represent him in the world? That's the question we need to ask. Maybe the book is foretelling of a time where the end of this devil's rule is to come to an end. 4,000 years ago was not the end of that time. With the coming of Musa. So if God came to the Jews some 4,000 years ago to tell them to set up a government and that he would be their God and they would represent him on earth. That would be 4,000 years before the time of the end of the devil's rule, this world. That's another reason why they cannot be the chosen people of God. We have it in the Bible. We know it. Some of us know it like the back of our hand. Some of our Christian preachers can recite all the scriptures. Some of our Muslim imams can cite it. Well, let's just read through it a little bit to get some perspective. This is in Exodus chapter 6, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, now you will see that I will do to Pharaoh because of my mighty hand. He will let them go because of my mighty hand. He will drive them out of his country. God also said to Moses, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. By my name, the Lord, in some interpretations it says Jehovah, I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, where they lived as aliens. Moreover, I have heard the groans of the Israelites, whom the Egyptians are enslaved, and I have remembered my covenant. Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out, and I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. And I will bring you into a land I swore with uplifted hands to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And I will give it to you as a possession, and I am the Lord. Moses reported this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him because of their discouragement and cruel bondage. Then the Lord said to Moses, go tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites go out of his country. And then it goes on. But I wanted you to hear that it is God, the Lord, who is saying that I am going to claim these people. I am going to be their God. They are going to represent me. I'm going to deliver them from Egypt. The Jews, have no historical record of that ever taking place, whereas you do. You do have a record of a man coming to the United States of America saying that I am God. Is that right?
That's right.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us that he is Almighty God, Allah, and continue to worship and praise him with that name, Almighty God, Allah. That's who the book says would come. Now, whether our people believe that he is Almighty God, Allah, or not, it is irrelevant. It is a historical record and a fact that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that he was Almighty God, Allah, and we believed it. It is a record that this man came out of the east into the west. Is that right? As the Bible projected, one would come in answer to a covenant made between him and Abraham. So God comes to fulfill a promise made to Abraham. Now, where's Abraham from? If you read in Bible and Holy Quran and history, you find that Abraham is from Arabia. And that he spent time right there in Mecca, Arabia, along with his family and his son Ishmael. And they rebuilt the Kaaba. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So we know that Abraham is from that area. And that land that's promised to his progeny or offspring would be that area. Now the devil has gone in and has divided the land. He separated Canaan from Iran, Iraq, from Syria, from Lebanon, from Arabia. But that whole peninsula is a piece of land that is Abraham's descendants' land. The whole thing God promised to Abraham. If the Jews are the chosen people of God, why did they get their land only in 1948? Why was their government established in 1948? Now, I believe that a government is to be established. And the Jews were right and exact in thinking that we need a government that we can call our own, not only to protect us against our enemies, which we're going to go, just like our brothers did in the United States of America, and steal the land from the Native Americans. We're going to go and steal the land from the Native Palestinians. We're going to need a government to protect ourselves from them. And that it is a divine order for the children of God to have a sovereign nation and a government that they can call their own. Well, why do you say that, brother? It is because you read in the book, Isaiah 9 and 6. It says, for unto us a child is born. For unto us a son is given, right? And the government shall be upon his shoulder, right? And that the government will last forever and ever. Now, here's the trick for the Jews. How do they make that connection? Since that they reject Jesus of the Bible and history as being the Son of God. And most theologians believe that that Son that's given is Jesus, the Christ. How can they reject the Christ and then also say, yeah, we are the chosen of God and we have a government that is representing God on the planet? Don't make sense. Because the government is supposed to be on the shoulder of that particular one. That when he comes with a government upon his shoulders. So now we're getting a little closer to why God wanted to choose a people. He wanted to choose a people because he wanted to establish a government on earth to do his will on earth at the end of the devil's rule of 6,000 years. He wanted his people to have self-determination. And these are modern terms. When Master Prophet Muhammad came, he established the lost, found nation of Islam. Now, and we really looked at that. We know what the lost means. We know that we were lost from our geographical homeland, Asia, Africa, the Middle East. We know that we were lost from our native tongue, the ability to speak our mother tongue. We know that we were lost from our culture. We know that we were lost from our religion, our knowledge of God, and the knowledge of self. The found part was Master Fraud Muhammad initially coming from Mecca, Arabia to us with that government upon his shoulder, in his mind, in his head, and that seed of a government in his head placed into the mind of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to materialize it, to give birth to it in his offspring, who would ultimately manifest that government or that nation. But note the terms that he used: lost, found, nation of Islam. What is a nation? I just want to give a definition of nation. A nation is a stable community of people formed on the basis of a common language, territory, economic life, ethnicity, or psychological makeup manifested in a common culture. A nation is distinct from a people and is more abstract and more overtly political than an ethnic group. It is a cultural, political community that has become conscious of autonomy, unity, and particular interests. So when Master Farah Muhammad came to us and said that you are the lost found nation of Islam, that you are people with a common culture, a common history, a common community, and should have a desire to be a autonomous community all amongst yourself. So he was giving birth to that ideology of self-determination to get us to start thinking about a political organization that would be utilized to bring about a government. Can we see it? He didn't just call us Nation Islam just because nation sounded cute. He called us the Nation Islam for a particular reason, trying to identify us as a common political group that is to represent a government and establish that government right here on the face of the planet Earth. Now, last week we talked about truth and how truth does not just happen, right? That truth has some forensic evidence to support it, right?
Yes, sir.
We talked about how someone could commit a murder, right? And drive away, walk away, get into their car, drive away from the scene of the crime, and they're not present when the authorities find the body, right? But through forensics, the detectives can check the footprints of anybody walking on the floor. Perhaps that shoe that they used to commit that murder had some fibers from the carpet or left an imprint in the blood spattered on the floor, that they could trace that back to the perpetrator. They can see where the tire marks from the car left the scene of the crime, and then find out the make and model of that tire and who perhaps may have bought tires of that kind within the recent past, and then link it back to the car, and then link it back to the perpetrator. That is forensic evidence,
Yes, sir.
of facts supporting the truth that this person committed the murder. So in like manner, there must be some forensic evidence to support our position that we have when we say that, okay, Almighty God Allah master, in the person of Master Muhammad, came to the United States of America to find us and to get us to establish a government, right?
Yes, sir.
We refer back to the history of Master Muhammad and matches it up with the Bible. In the book of Isaiah 46 and 9, I believe it says that we are going to send a ravenous bird, the man that will execute our counsel from a far country. Did Master Muhammad come from a far country? Yes, he did. Was he a man?
Yes, sir.
Yes, he was. In Matthew 24:27, it says, as the lightning shineth out of the east into the west, then so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Master Muhammad came out of the east, Mecca, Arabia, to the western hemisphere of America, right?
Yes,
For whatsoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. So he came where the dead carcass was, right here. And as he came out of Mecca, Arabia, we know that he came from that region around 1910 and 11, right? What was the political environment? What was going on at the time when he came? We knew that the Ottoman Empire was in control of that area, that they were ruling out of Turkey. That was their capital, Istanbul or Constantinople. And that there was a drive and a call for independent nations to be established at that particular time. We note that around World War I, which is in 1914, the book says that when God comes, you will see war and rumors of war. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
If Master Muhammad, this man, came in 1910 and 11, prior to World War I, then we saw and heard about war and rumors of war when he came. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
He was in and out of America. That was the first world war that the devils had amongst themselves. All of the great nations, Russia, France, Italy, all of the European nations were at war. So that is fulfillment of prophecy.
Yes, sir.
At the time, the British were trying to help tear down the Ottoman Empire, where they would not have influence over the Middle East. They were in cahoots with the Saudis and made promises to the Saudi Arabian government that they were going to allow for the Saudis to have a government, because they did not officially have a government. They were a nation. They were peoples, but they did not officially have a government that was recognized by the Western world. So they were in cahoots with them and said, we're going to allow you, Saudi, I think it was King Ali at the time, who was the Caliph of Mecca, we're going to allow you guys to